going on, guys? It's Jordan DeYonk here, and today I want to talk to you about buying a property during COVID-19. This is a follow-up video from my previous video talking about my approach, which if you haven't seen already, go ahead and watch that one first. In today's video, I'll be going through all of the details of the purchase. Now, just because I purchased a property during this season is not personal advice for you to go out and do the same. This is obviously a very uneasy time in the current market, and given the circumstances, I know plenty of people that would say to me, quote unquote, I need to get my head examined.
Well, as Tony Lacantro says, people selling now are looking for the greater fool who's going to buy. Frankly, I think anybody who was going into the market at the moment actually need their heads examined because there are so many uncertainties.
You gotta love Martin North. He's not actually the doomsayer everyone makes him out to be. He's just a data-driven guy making observations, and I'd highly recommend taking in some of his content no matter where you stand, and as Ray Dalio says, allowing us to be radically open-minded. From my personal point of view, I'm using the current circumstances to be opportunistic and to add to my portfolio at a time that I don't think we're going to see again for a while. At the end of the day, I'm not trying to time the market or pick the bottom. My strategy has always been to acquire and hold. I feel like the market has already dropped at least 10% given consumer confidence fell to ridiculous levels but has since recovered. Either way, I'm not fussed if in the short term the market drops another 10%. In 40 years time, I feel like I'll look back on this decision and be quite satisfied with the results. On top of this, everyone has their opinions. Many are saying that the property market is too big to fail, hence all the construction stimulus. Others are giving ridiculous ranges of negative 20% to positive 5%, and even Christopher Joy is having a field day, posing as a Wolverine hunting down the property bears. No one has an exact crystal ball and knows exactly what's going to happen in the future. So I took some of my own advice and assessed the current market myself. And I went pretty deep, looking at the mining sector alongside China's import and exports, outstanding mortgage debts, mortgage stress numbers, and deep diving into if Westpac was going to go insolvent. That list is endless, and this is typical me over-analysing everything. What I've come to realise lately is no matter which side of the fence that you sit on, you can always find statistics to support your case. You can interpret data in many different ways, and no matter how you slice and dice it, you can cherry-pick the results to support your agenda. Anyway, that's just my rant for this video. Let's delve into the good stuff. So, long story short, we didn't end up buying our stepping stone home from the previous video, which I stated. Taking these requirements into consideration, my wife and I have decided that this next purchase will be the final stepping stone into our dream family house. So this will be the house before our final family home. It will need to be a 3-bedroom minimum and still tick all of those boxes of an A-grade investment property. This purchase will obviously have to be in Melbourne, as that's where we are currently, and we're planning for this to be our principal place of residence. So I'm confident enough in my ability to do my own due diligence and research without having to approach a buyer's agent, which I've said I would only do if I buy in another state. Well, long story short, we did end up buying in another state, and we did end up using a buyer's agent, so I did stick to my word in some form. Essentially, what changed between that first video and the property purchase was the price point. In this current economic environment, I could only borrow up to $500,000, and this wasn't going to make the cut for those original requirements. Although this figure would allow us to get into some sub-markets, such as a 3-bedroom unit in Footscray or a house in Gladstone Park, there was still some unfavourable investment criteria that prevented us from buying in those sub-markets at that price point. On top of that, we already have 2 properties in that vicinity, and the more I thought about it, it was time for us to diversify. In terms of preparing for a baby on the way, we have actually settled into one of our existing properties quite nicely, with a dedicated baby room that will work quite well while she's still young. Even with a second child, the configuration will work quite well in the early days, and this will allow us to live here for at least 3 to 5 years. Worst case scenario, if we needed more space, we could just rent Vest while we save for our dream home. And this is still the goal for our next property, which I'll talk about at the end of this video. But if you're loving this content so far, don't forget to smash that like button. So what did we end up buying, and who was this buyer's agent that we used? Well, I've been lucky enough to become really good friends with many buyer's agents through my podcast, Smashed Avo Property. One in particular I now talk to daily, Joey DeGarda, who has already amassed a decent portfolio, and he's even a year younger than I am. If you haven't listened to Joey's episode already, I would highly recommend giving it a listen. Essentially, because I've been talking to Joey so regularly, I gave him my brief and requirements, and he was kind enough to put the feelers out for me. My brief was pretty simple: a 2-bedroom, 60/70s double brick unit in a complex with less than 20 units in it, and it had to be under that $500,000 price tag, in the eastern suburbs of Sydney. Well, that's not that simple, but essentially that's what we were aiming for. Now, a little disclaimer, this is not investment advice to purchase those specific properties. I don't know your personal circumstances or financial situation. However, based on my own circumstances and existing portfolio, this was the strategy I went for. Thankfully, this was Joey's stomping ground and his bread and butter. So initially we thought this would limit us to certain suburbs like Rockdale and Brightly Sands, which I was perfectly fine with and almost did end up buying a unit one street back from the beach in Brightly Sands. At the most unknown time in the market, a ton of vendors were putting their listings on halt. There was very limited stock on the market and all of the A-grade assets pretty much got snapped up immediately as soon as someone got a whiff of them. This, in my opinion, made the off-market marketing strategy boom, where listing agents emailed their VIP clients, or essentially their entire mailing list, with any new properties that were getting listed before they actually got put on those bigger platforms. Luckily, Joey is pretty chummy with majority of the agents in that area, and we were fortunate enough to secure a unit with similar criteria in Botany. We did have to sacrifice one major element though, which was that it was a one-bedroom unit, and this took me a little while to analyse and to come to terms with. So, one bedroom, one bathroom, one carport, and it had recently been renovated. I guess ultimately this came down to my due diligence, running the numbers against comparable sales in the area and reaching out to a number of other experts from the area to gain their opinion and counsel. The price point we ended up securing it for I was very happy with, and Joey did a phenomenal job during the negotiation phase. I'm not going to give away all of his tactics, but essentially the vendor started around that $500K mark and we ended up securing it for $473,800. Now that odd number may give you some insight to the strategy, and I guess this is why I feel like the market had already dropped about 10%. Anyway, if you do want to talk to Joey, you can jump onto his website at estroproperty.com. He's also on all social platforms and I'll leave that link in the description section below. Although past performance is not an indication of future performance, historically the complex has performed consistently over the last 30 years. The demographics in that area are very strong and the current rental rate that the property is leased for is very favourable. This all comes down to my risk profile too. I'm not looking for the next hotspot, I'm not looking for unheard of rental returns or the next growth corridor. I just want something that's performed consistently over time. Some great reassurance on the purchase price came through not only a week later. Another unit in the same complex that was on the market, which was a one bedroom, one bathroom without a carport and unrenovated, sold for $475,000. $1,200 more than we got ours for. So essentially we got a renovation and a carport for free. I'll do a separate video for the full due diligence checklist that I did for this specific property, so make sure you subscribe and smash that notification bell so you don't miss it. In the meantime, if you want to know how to find an A-grade investment property, you can watch this series up here. So, what is our next game plan? We do still want that dream family home. Our plan is to save as much as possible in the next 3 to 5 years and hopefully be able to pull out some equity of our existing properties to get into a larger asset. Obviously, our requirements could change dramatically between now and then, so no specifics can be identified right now. But after that purchase, the aim would be to own $3 million in assets on an 80% LVR, meaning we'd have $2.4 million in outstanding mortgage debt and $600,000 in equity. At this point in my portfolio, depending on the current market cycle, I'll most likely head into the consolidation phase, where essentially I assess the performance of my assets over the next cycle, which is most likely going to take 15 years now rather than the typical 7 to 10 years it's taken historically. If the assets are performing as expected, I'll continue to grow the offset against my debt as quickly as possible, allowing me access to a large amount of capital if a great opportunity came up. Although I'd probably most likely want to retire my debt completely and live off the cash flow from that point. I no longer want to grow my portfolio larger than 5 assets. I just want to live comfortably off the income from my properties, and as long as we can go on an annual holiday to the destination of our choice, there's no real need to earn anything more. If you want to learn more about my 4 stages to a property portfolio, you can watch my previous video up here. I want to know where you guys are at with your current portfolio and how you feel about the current property market. Leave it down in the comment section below. As always, seek your own professional financial, legal, taxation and property investing advice for your current situation. These videos are just my opinion and are general in nature and should never be considered as personal advice. If you're keen for more content, make sure you subscribe and smash that notification bell so you don't miss a video. And until next time, happy house hunting.